Back here on CBS Sports HQ, we could officially close the book on Week 10 after a very, very slow game last night between the Packers and the Eagles. And if the postseason were to begin today, here is how things would shake out. On the left, you see the Colts standing strong up top, followed by the Chargers, the Steelers. No Chiefs in the playoff picture just yet, but we'll keep our eye on them. They're going against the Broncos, who are the current 2 seed. Then on the right, the NFC, no surprise, the Philadelphia Eagles have gotten it together. They stand atop those standings. You got the Seahawks in the mix, too. Really, the NFC West is cooking right now. We're going to talk about that later in the show. But let's get into some postseason conversations. And for more on the postseason, we bring in our NFL writer, John Breech. Breech is going to kind of break down the playoff picture for us into tiers. And Breech, we're starting with teams that are a lock for postseason play. So these are ones that our Sportsline model basically gives a 90% chance or better to make the postseason. Which teams are you liking in that bracket, Breech?
That's right. And Sportsline isn't saying they're a lock. I'm saying they're a lock because these teams are not going to collapse down the stretch. Let's start in the AFC. The teams that have a 90% chance or better of getting in. The New England Patriots. They haven't been to the playoffs since 2021. It's like Tom Brady days back there with Drake May. So they look like a lock right now. The Indianapolis Colts coming on strong. And then also the Denver Broncos. And those 3 teams have one big thing in common, Haley. They are all 8-2. And so when you have that record 10 weeks through the season, they could essentially collapse down the stretch and probably still make the playoffs. You're looking at these 3 teams. If they go 3-4 over their final 7 games, they still get to 11-6. That's getting you in the playoffs. So these 3 teams feel very, very comfortable right now. In the NFC, there are 4 teams that have chances above 90%. We're looking at them right now. That is the Seahawks, the Los Angeles Rams, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You mentioned the NFC West. It really feels like the Seahawks and Rams are kind of running away with that division. The 49ers are kind of beat up. It would be a shocker if either of those 2 teams was left out. The NFC East, outside of Philadelphia, is a total disaster. I think Philadelphia could sleepwalk through the rest of the season and still win that division title. And then obviously the NFC South, the Buccaneers, because they are in a division that is not so great, that is why Tampa Bay is so high on the list. So there you go. Half the playoff spots already taken, Haley. That's it right there, 7-14.
That means everyone else is kind of clawing and scratching and chasing after all these teams. I mentioned it. No Chiefs in the AFC picture just yet, but they've got a big test against the Broncos this weekend. Let's talk about some playoff new bloods here, Breech. These are teams that are like not normally our cast of characters when we think about postseason football, but could make some news down the stretch. So what teams are you looking at here?
Well, one of the stats that always blows my mind with the NFL is that in every season since 1990, there have been 4 new playoff teams. And every year I think there's no way that's going to continue this year. At some point it's going to end. There's not going to be 4 new playoff teams. But guess what? We're perfectly on track to have 4 new playoff teams that did not make the playoffs last year. We mentioned the Patriots and the Colts. Neither of them were in the postseason last year. We know that. The Patriots haven't been there since Mac Jones a few years ago. It's also been a few years for the Indianapolis Colts. Then you also have a couple other teams that could end up in the playoffs that were not in there last year. And with that, we're talking about the Bears and 49ers kind of duking it out at the bottom of the NFC for possibly a 6th or 7th seed. I think the 49ers probably have a little bit of an easier path there. And then we also have the Seahawks. They've been so good this season. It's easy to forget they did not make the playoffs last year. They went 10-7, just missed out on winning the NFC West, but they didn't even get the wild card with those 10 wins. And so they got left out last year. So when Seattle gets in, they're one of the locks again. That means they will be back in the postseason for the first time in several years. So there you go. We've got the Colts, the Patriots, the Seahawks, and then probably the Bears or 49ers. I like San Francisco a little bit more, and so does Sportsline, giving them a 70% chance to get in.
How fun have the Bears been this year? My goodness, all of those games coming down to the wire in the fourth quarter. I would like to see them in the postseason just for what they've done through the first half of the season. Maybe not so much for this next tier, though, John. We're talking teams hanging on by a thread, which basically means there's a chance, but you got to have a lot working in your favor. The Bengals and the Finns in this conversation.
Yeah, these are the 2 teams that need to fire up the Lloyd Christmas meme, so you're telling me there's a chance. Well, I know the Dolphins are 3-7. I know the Bengals are 3-6. But the reason these teams are still hanging on by a thread, let's look at Miami's schedule right here. Sure, they're 3-7. They're headed to Spain this week. They're about to face the Washington Commanders, a very winnable game. The 2 games after that, the New Orleans Saints, the New York Jets. If you win all 3 of those, I think the Miami Dolphins will be favored in all 3 games. Now you're 6-7 heading into Week 15, and you are right back in the playoff race heading into a Monday night game with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think the Dolphins have to feel good about where they are right now, considering their circumstances. And Mike McDaniel certainly feels good about things because he's out there doing victory laps in his car around bars in Fort Lauderdale where Bills fans hang out. And then let's look at the Bengals. Sure, they're 3-6 and their defense can't stop anyone. But the one thing to keep in mind with Cincinnati is that they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday. They're only going to be 1 game out of first place. And let's not forget, Joe Burrow just returned to practice on Monday. He is targeting that Thanksgiving game in Week 15 against the Week 13 against the Baltimore Ravens. So if you're Cincinnati and you beat the Steelers, you're 1 game out, you have Burrow coming back for Thanksgiving, now you feel like suddenly maybe you can steal this division. So I think the Bengals and Dolphins, just keep those hopes alive there, Bengals and Dolphins fans.
How about Mike McDaniel rolling past the competition at the elbow room, watch hanging out the window? He knew what he was doing there. Baller move on his part there. Let's talk about a division breach that it feels like no one wants to win in. We know the AFC North is always a gauntlet. This year, no different. It just seems like the race is going to come down to the final wire here. You got the Ravens getting healthy. You've got the Steelers looking a little shaky, like you just talked about, and the Bengals, too. So how do you see this race playing out? Who wins it?
Yeah, I'm not going to rule out any of these teams. I realize we're looking here at the odds, and the Ravens are a huge odds-on favorite right now. The Bengals interesting at plus 1,100, but the one thing with the Ravens, remember, they already have 5 losses, so they are 4-5. And another thing to keep in mind is that over the past 5 years, the best division record the Ravens have ever had is 4-2. So they have lost at least 2 division games in every season over the past 5 years. Well, if they lose 2 division games this year, that gets them up to 7 losses. And now all of a sudden, you don't feel like the favorite to win the division. They still have to play the Steelers twice. They still have to play the Bengals twice. And I'm not just going to hand them those 2 games to Cincinnati, because if you're Baltimore, you're either going to be facing Joe Flacco, who is going to be out in an all-time revenge game, or you're going to be facing Joe Burrow, who has diced up that secondary multiple times. And then with those Steelers games, Mike Tomlin has a very good track record against the Ravens. So I don't know if the Ravens are just going to sweep those. And if they don't, they still have the Packers and Patriots on the schedule. So I don't think Baltimore should be as heavy as a favorite as they are. I do think they probably win the division, but I think the Steelers and Bengals are absolutely still alive. And whoever wins that Bengals-Steelers game on Sunday, I think, is going to have the inside track to possibly staying ahead of the Ravens.
Yeah, just a wild finish in that division each and every year. But with a healthy Lamar Jackson, it's hard to go against the Ravens at the moment. If we go over to the AFC West, it's kind of been a different season than we've been accustomed to seeing in there. You know, we've seen Kansas City run the table for, 9 years now, but they currently sit in 3rd behind the Broncos and the Chargers. Breech. Where are you at in terms of who's going to win this division? Is this finally the year that someone can take down the Chiefs?
It's just crazy to think if you were 25 years old, you were probably a freshman in high school the last time the Chiefs didn't win this division. They have a 9-year run going, and it really feels like this Sunday that the Denver Broncos could kind of just drive a stake into the Chiefs' chances of winning the division this year, because if they lose on Sunday, I don't think they have any chance of winning. I do not think they will win it for the 10th straight year. So this is obviously a huge game in Denver for the Broncos, for the Chiefs, because if you want to knock the Chiefs off, you have to beat them eventually. And you look at all of these division games left for Kansas City. They have to play Denver twice. They still have to play the Chargers again. So they are going to have a say in whether they win this division. I'm going to go ahead and say they do not. Anytime I pick against the Chiefs, they make me look absolutely silly. So that could be the case here. But Denver, even though their wins, they've only got 1 win over against a team that's over 500 right now. That's the Philadelphia Eagles. But again, if they just go 4-3 down the stretch, that gets them to 12 wins. I don't think the Chiefs can get the 12 wins. So if you're Denver, you just go 4-3, boom, you're at the top of the division.
When it comes to the Chiefs, they are currently the 8th seed in the playoff picture, right behind the Jags, and I feel like that loss is going to haunt them if all the things you just talked about comes true. John Breech checking in with us on that playoff picture. We're going to talk back with you shortly, so stick around for a minute. In the meantime, make sure you get familiar with our CBS Sports HQ platform. We're bringing news and notes and highlights from the NFL and beyond, streaming for free 24/7. Back here on CBS Sports HQ, talk about a battle at the top in the NFC West. It always brings the fireworks, and this year will be another fight to the finish. It gets even more interesting on Sunday when the top two teams go head-to-head. Both the Seahawks and the Rams sitting at 7-2, both riding 4-game win streaks, and both will have to be careful with the 49ers looming. We have got our NFL writer, John Breech, back with us to break down what the rest of the season will look like in this wild, wild west ride, I should say, John Breech. Say that 3 times fast. Let's talk about the Seahawks going into Week 11. They're coming off that 44-22 win over the Cardinals to reclaim the top spot for now. We saw the defense come alive. We saw JSN cross over the 1,000-yard mark. How do you see the rest of the season playing out in Seattle?
Yeah, the Seahawks have been absolutely dominant over the past 2 weeks, Haley, sitting at 7-2. So what happens over these final 8 games? Well, let's take a look at their schedule. I think on Sunday, this is obviously a huge game. You're playing your co-first place team there in the Los Angeles Rams. I think the Rams get the best of them. That game is in LA, so Seattle has to go on the road. And then you look at the rest of the Seahawks schedule, and there are some very winnable games against the Titans. That feels like a win. The Falcons, the Panthers, both of those feel like wins. But then you have a couple interesting games. Number one with the Vikings, where you have Sam Darnold revenge game, but you also have Brian Flores, a very good defensive coordinator. He knows Sam Darnold's weaknesses. I don't think that team is going to lose by 21 points to the Seahawks, but I like Seattle in that game too. You go to the Colts. If that game was in Indianapolis, I would probably pick Indy, but Indianapolis has to go out to Seattle. I'm going to take the Seahawks there. And then the Rams on Thursday night in Week 16. I'm going to say the Rams pull off the sweep. I just think the Rams are a slightly better team this year. Not the Seahawks aren't great. They're going to go to the playoffs. They're going to make some noise in the postseason. And because the Rams get that sweep, that means the Seahawks won't have anything to play for in Week 18. So the 49ers beat them. Seattle ends up 12-5.
Yeah, it's going to be fun on Sunday. I will say this, must-watch TV when the Rams and the Seahawks meet for the first time. A lot of it has just been because of Matthew Stafford. He continues to elevate each and every week. So when we look at the Rams, I know you kind of broke down how you think they're going to do against the Seahawks, but for the rest of the schedule with the Rams, is this your division winner?
This is absolutely my division winner. The Rams just totally flummoxed me all year because they threw me a curveball to everyone back in August when Matthew Stafford didn't practice for 3 weeks because of his back injury. I didn't even think Matthew Stafford was going to be able to get out of bed in Week 1, let alone show up and then just go on a roll. And the Rams have looked like one of the best teams in football because Stafford has been playing at an MVP level. The only quarterback in NFL history to throw 4 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions in 3 straight games. He's on a heater right now, and I do not expect that to stop, and that's good because they have some very difficult games. They have the 6th most difficult strength of schedule for the rest of the season. After they face the Seahawks, that's a huge game against the Buccaneers on Sunday night. I think they win that one. And then you see the Panthers and Cardinals, both very winnable games. You also have that showdown with Detroit. Stafford's going to want to get revenge on his old team. I actually think the Lions win that game, but then the Rams rebound with that Thursday night win over the Seahawks. And then beating the Falcons on Monday night. So at that point, the Rams will have swept the Seahawks. They'll have clinched the division, rest their starters in Week 18, lose to Arizona, and head to the postseason with a 13-4 record.
They did just drop the uniforms that they're set to wear in that game against the Seahawks. They're very nice. They're calling them midnight mode. Like, think deep navy with like blue pops and yellow. It's like Chargers, but dare I say better. So I'm excited about the uniform matchup in that one. Also curious about the Niners in this situation because it seems like it doesn't matter who's on the field for them. They find a way to win. They have had injury after injury after injury, and yet they sit in 3rd in the division, but like a close 3rd here, Breech. The schedule as well is very favorable as we take a look at it here. How does this team finish?
Yeah, you look at the 49ers, they have the easiest strength of schedule of any team in this division for the rest of the season. It is just like Kyle Shanahan is trying to will his team to that Week 14 bye. Let's just keep our head above water so we can actually get healthy. And at 6-4, I do think they can do that, because you look at these games they have before that bye. You're talking about the Cardinals, the Panthers, the Browns, all 3 games against teams that are all 500 or under 500 at this point. And so I do think the 49ers win all of those games. And if they're 9-4 at the bye, they're going to be feeling very comfortable. They have the Titans coming out of that. That seems like a game the 49ers should win. So now they're up to 10 wins if they do win all these games, and I think they'll be favored in all 4 of those games. Then you look at that closing stretch to end the year. If they win just one of those, and I do think they'll beat the Bears, they get up to 11 wins. That gets them to 11-6, and I have to think 11-6 gets them in a postseason. So I like San Francisco to get to the playoffs at 11-6, Haley.
3 teams potentially as playoff contenders here. This division is always so fun, and as we talked about earlier, it always comes down to the last couple of weeks. So feels like we're in for a treat there. Unfortunately, the Cardinals just cannot keep up right now. It feels like, have you ever seen that meme where it's like the 3 dragons and it's like 2 serious, scary dragons and then the silly one? That's kind of how the Cardinals feel to me right now. Obviously, they put Kyler Murray on IR. They just got handled that terrible loss to the Seahawks earlier this week. What's the goal? What does the rest of the season look like for that 3rd dragon in Arizona?
The 3rd dragon is going nowhere. This feels like it's been a bad luck season, really, for the Cardinals, because if you look at before the Seattle game, their 5 losses when they were 3-5 had all been by 4 points or less. They were only a few plays away from being 6-2 or even 7-1. But then the wheels fell off the wagon in Seattle, and they lost by 22 points. And at this point, it does feel like their season is over. The 3-6. You look at that impossible slate of games they have coming up with the 49ers. Then they have to play Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, and the Rams. I don't think they're going to win any of those games. And then if you lose all 4 of those, you're sitting at 3-10. And then how motivated are your players when that's your record going into mid-December? So maybe they pull off an upset at the end of the season against Houston or Atlanta. And like I said, if the Rams have clinched the division, maybe they rest their starters in Week 18. So I could see the Cardinals getting to 5 wins, maybe 6 if everything goes right, but I don't think it's going to be much higher than that. So I'll just say 5-12, and the Cardinals go into the offseason in kind of a depressing way, because this team's going to have a lot of things to figure out if that ends up being the case.
You know what, though, John? They did beat my Cowboys in prime time, so they can have that on their schedule. Breech, we appreciate the time. As always, want to give you folks at home one final look at his NFC West predictions for each team. He has the Rams winning this division in a close one, 13-4, their final record, followed by the Seahawks. The 49ers, he feels like they could be a playoff team if things fall in their favor, and then the Cardinals, that 3rd dragon. Let's just get through the season happy and healthy in Arizona.